Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the BuzzStream podcast. I'm your host, Vince Nero, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by Madeleine Dykes. She is the head of digital PR at Rise at 7. How you doing, Madeleine?
I'm doing good. How are you, Vince?
I'm doing great. We were talking about the rain here on the East Coast. It's a little bit of a bummer, but hey, today what we're talking about, reactive PR. I'm really excited to talk with you, Madeleine, because I told you I was just speaking this to someone from Fat Joe, another agency. Typically, kind of like she's coming from like the UK perspective, I think, of reactive PR. And I wanted to talk to you specifically because I know you head up the US efforts at Rise at 7. So I have a feeling these tactics are going to be a little different. But before we jump into this, I just want to remind everybody, like, subscribe, share this stuff with your colleagues. The more we can spread this stuff around, the more we can have great guests on like Madeleine. Let's jump into it. I think the first thing I want to just give users or listeners a feel for is like what the day in the life looks like for you, for someone in reactive PR. Because I know to a lot of people, this is an always on type of thing. So I just want to give them a little sense of what it's like to do it.
Totally. Yeah. So when you're focusing on reactive activity for a client or your own business, I think probably the first thing to do is just be aware of what's going on in the news around you. So whether, if your business is more local, take a look at what's happening, in your hometown. If it's something that could be applicable worldwide or nationwide, just pay attention to the news. You never know what can tie into, what your expertise is in. So typically in my life, I like to listen to podcasts in the morning, just kind of like quickly summarizes up the news. I will browse like Google News, kind of see what the top headlines are of the day. And then if I'm focusing on a specific industry or niche, kind of dig in a little bit deeper on, like the business trends of the day or entertainment trends, kind of see what's going on. And I also too love to follow like Instagram accounts that either follow specific celebrities or like those kind of trends, just because news happens really fast. And so just being aware of it right off the bat or during the day is really helpful.
Yeah. So you mentioned a couple of different things there. And I think it's really interesting to me is like this idea of kind of having your set routine of like the things that you're checking. And that's kind of the feedback I've gotten from a lot of different people outside of, some of the things you mentioned, podcasts, reading the news online, Google News. Are you setting alerts for specific topics, that sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely. Especially for like clients, I'll like set up alerts either based around their industry or their business, or maybe like keywords that are really relevant to them. I definitely will. But a lot of times too, it's like kind of natural browsing. I think that's really helpful. Also, times I'll sign up for like newsletters that might be applicable to their industries. For example, we had like a health client. And so from there, I signed up for a bunch of like fitness newsletters, a lot of like science, health newsletters, just so I could kind of keep up to date on what's happening in that general industry, and it comes straight to me. So that makes life a little bit easier.
And I mean, is it you're looking for hooks, or is it you're looking for, or I just should ask it this way, like, what hooks are you looking for? Is
Yeah.
it, is it like data points that you can kind of hook into, like, whatever this energy drink is trending and my health client thinks energy drinks are bad for you, whatever, or good for you.
Yeah.
Or is it, tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So typically when I'm reading the news or like listening to a podcast about the news or reading these newsletters, I'm really just looking to know generally what people are talking about. So then I can get a sense of what people care about, if there's controversy happening, if there's maybe a new trend that people are exploring or looking into, because then I can think to myself, oh, does my client have an opinion on this? Could we offer some commentary? Or are people really into something and maybe they don't know the full story that maybe my client could offer on? Or is there like a certain trend that's happening that maybe people want to explore, like outside of just a specific bubble? Like, is it a travel trend that maybe we could be like, oh, there's certain towns that you could visit to leverage this trend? So kind of always just thinking about different ways that different clients can leverage different trends. But most of the time, like typically every day, I don't always walk away from consuming the news being like, I have a genius idea. It's more of just kind of like generally absorbing the news. So you kind of have an idea like, oh, okay, this is something people are talking about. This is something people care about. So if maybe a week later or a couple days later down the line, something happened, then I'm like, I know this is popular. I know my client can comment on it. Like we can move pretty quickly and still kind of like catch the wave when it's happening.
Yeah. So you mentioned this idea of like commenting on specific news, and we talked about this briefly before we were recorded here, but like, I think the commentary thing is really interesting to me because like in the UK, this seems like a kind of tried and true thing, like pitching commentary. Whereas in the US, a lot of the time, at least the feedback I've gotten from journalists when talking to them is like, we solicit comments ourselves. Like we will go out to find the people. We don't need people coming to us because most of the time they're looking for academic, researchers and that sort of thing. Whereas maybe in the UK it's slightly different or just depends on who I'm talking to. But I mean, do you feel that sense? Is that kind of the case here in the US? Is it harder to kind of pitch yourself as an expert?
I think what gets tricky is it's kind of twofold, right? So any commentary that you offer ever just needs to be useful. It needs to be opinionated. It needs to be succinct. And I think it needs to be something that they're not really going to hear from anybody else. So it has to be, newsworthy in itself. So coming up with commentary that matches all of those wickets can be tricky and it can be hard, especially, if a client maybe doesn't want to push the envelope or maybe is a little scared to say something that might cause some controversy. So that can be hard. To your point about, journalists going out and finding people to comment, you can beat them to it by reaching out beforehand. So a lot of the strategies that we've done in the past, like, for example, if we have a client in the health space and we know what kind of publications they want to be in, we'll reach out before anything is really even happening and be like, hi, my name's so-and-so. These are the experts that we have on this topic, and we can talk about X, Y, and Z. Just let us know. So we kind of put it out there. Typically, we won't get a response, maybe like a thank you. But then months down the line, oftentimes we'll get an email out of the blue. Hey, I'm writing an article about this. Can your source get me a comment about this in the next 24 hours or whatever? And we're like, yep, happy to do that. So you kind of have to beat it a little bit, but you can still offer commentary in your relevant industries like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I've heard that tip a couple times, and yeah, I guess it could be a little scary because you're just sending stuff out there. You're not hearing anything back, and just kind of hoping they're going to get back to you. But when they do, it's cause for celebration, I guess.
Yeah. That's the story of PR shot right there.
Yeah, right. Seriously. Now, how about, so there's like the expert commentary thing, right? Like how can my client, or, if you're a small business, how can I insert myself into the narrative that's going on? What about the idea of like pitching kind of a full-fledged story that
Yeah.
leverages, a trending topic? More of like the newsjacking thing, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you do a lot of that?
Yeah. So we do it a lot, typically more often right now for our travel clients. Like if we'll see a trend and, maybe it's trending on TikTok or people are talking about it a lot, sometimes we'll see like, okay, is there a way that we can leverage this for, our client? And I'll give you an example. Like we didn't run with this, but it was something we thought about. Taylor Swift just announced her new album, Showgirl. And so instantly we were like, okay, what can we do with that? Can we come up? Are there Showgirl destinations? Are there destinations that are orange? Like we were brainstorming a lot of ideas. So that's definitely one way to go about it. Is something happens and then you kind of just take it and run with it. But a lot of times what's worked for us too is just like looking, events that happen every year that are seasonal, that people enjoy, and then we'll kind of just like leverage that trend. And that might be putting together a listicle that, a journalist is going to find useful, or maybe it's something about, like, for example, for like a car client, something about upcoming weather and providing, the best tips for driving in, sleet or something like that. So there's different ways to kind of go about it that's different than just commenting on something that's specifically happening.
Yeah. How about using existing data or content that your client has? Have you ever tried doing
Yeah,
that? Is that?
definitely. I feel like that's the easiest way, rather than making up or coming up with something totally unique. If you have something on your blog that's super relevant, and that's just another thing to link to, right? So I think just putting that out there and sharing that and offering it as, your expertise is really helpful to a journalist because they don't have time to scour the entire internet. So if we can share them, hey, like you're probably working on a story about this. that's trending right now. This is why you should care. And here's all the information you need. I think that's super helpful for them.
Yeah. I mean, what about people are, trying to do this themselves, right?
Yeah.
Are there shortcuts? Are there ways to prepare for being reactive?
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, if what you want help with is like having the ideas come to you or having the opportunities come to you, I think there's a lot of great platforms for that. Like we use Haro, we use Quoted. It's really great. Like literally sends you an email. You can scour through and see if there's anything that you want to address. But I also think, if you're a small business and you kind of want to get ahead of it, I think reaching out to, those applicable reporters or journalists, the publications that you want to be covered in, and just introduce yourself and offer yourself is a great way to get ahead of it. But that means that there is an opportunity that someone's going to reach out to you and be like, hey, I need something really quickly. And so I think on that front, you just kind of have to be ready and know what's going on in the industry so that you can comment effectively.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that repeatedly too. Is like, that is one way to easily kind of burn a bridge with a reporter, is if you're saying that you're an expert and can provide a quote and then you can't come up with it. They're
Right.
going to drop you to the bottom of the list pretty quickly, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing too. I mean, when you're working with journalists, right? Like a part of it is like building that trust. And so it's really just, say what you mean and mean what you say. So like if you say you're going to get them something by a certain time, you have to do that. Obviously things happen, but I think just being transparent and communicating with them, they're people, they're going to understand. But for the most part, you really just want to make sure you follow through on the promises that you make.
Yeah. It got me thinking too of like the idea of kind of building relationships. And it's funny, I've used this term a lot in the past. I mean, even back when I was at Siege Media. So like past 10 years, I've been saying building relationships with journalists is great. And then it was only till kind of recently I was having a discussion with Paul here, our CEO, and he was like, I think a lot of people like roll their eyes at that term, building relationships, because I guess, and what we kind of came up with was like, what I mean to say, I think, is building trust, because it's the idea that like when they see your name appear in the inbox, they know that this is going to be a good pitch. This is going to be good information. It's relevant information. So talk to me a little bit about that kind of building relationships thing. And I mean, do you feel the same way? Do you roll your eyes at that when you hear people talk about it? Is it kind of like saying branding to an SEO person?
So I definitely don't roll my eyes. I mean, I come from a traditional PR background. So like that was drilled into me, your relationships with your journalists are the most important thing. That's all that matters. I think now we've kind of moved on to something a little bit different, especially to in digital PR, because, people are more about like earning links and coverage, and that relationship sometimes feels like it gets lost in the sauce. I will say though, like as a people person, I like having relationships with journalists. I think it makes me better at my job and it makes my job much more enjoyable. So in that personal aspect, I think building relationships is important. As far as like earning coverage and links goes, I don't think it's the end all be all. I think if you have a good story and you send it to the right person, you're more likely to, earn that coverage and get that link that you want. However, I think it's really important to still say thank you. I think it's really important to still share it on your social media to help that journalist out, because in the long run, that journalist works somewhere else. You might build a relationship where you can come to them and say, hey, like I'm thinking of this campaign idea. What do you think? And just being able to bounce ideas off of, and that's not something that happens overnight. It takes time, but I think it's really valuable and it will only make you a better PR person in the long run. Um, and also, I think personally, it just makes the job much more enjoyable and just a lot more fun. So that would be my 2 cents.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I agree. I often, thinking back when I was doing agency work, like would pre-pitch ideas to journalists all the time. That's where I got my best feedback and idea.
Well,
And you could use that to talk to your clients. Like this journalist is kind of into it, like we know this idea has a way. Okay. So how about the thought process of like, you don't want to get repeat links from the same journalist, because that's not as great for SEO. And I mean, does any of that stuff matter anymore? Are we just kind of beyond that? Should we be thinking beyond those kind of nitty
Yeah.
gritty things.
I mean, I totally get the value of, earning new domains, earning new links. But I think too, like, to that point of like finding out if a campaign idea is good with one journalist means it probably will be, similar to another journalist. But I also think too, it's like if you want those new domains or those new links, it's more about building your story within those and then finding the applicable journalists with them. However, I will say now as we've kind of moved into the LLMs, AI overview worlds that we're in, I don't think getting links from the same publication is necessarily a bad thing. I think it only just kind of reinforces, your client or your business as a trusted source or expert in whatever, they're talking about. So I think it only adds to that. Again, that's completely a theory, but I don't think there's a reason to dismiss like getting the same links from the same publications. If it's the only links you're getting, that might be a problem. I think variety is always good, but if it's the quality top tier link, I don't think it should be dismissed if it happens.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree there. And I don't want to get too far off the reactive PR
Yeah, no
kind of
worries.
strain there. So let's bring it back because another thing that I think is really interesting to me is like you brought up like AI, right? Like when people talk to me nowadays and ask what are the strategies that work in digital PR, like everyone's saying it's getting harder, right? In general, digital PR is getting harder. The stuff that used to work doesn't work as well. I mean, is reactive PR something you'd put kind of high up in your strategy workflow for digital PRs or toolkit or whatever?
Yeah, totally. I think it's all part of like consistency, right? Like when you're trying to build either brand awareness or build that LinkedIn coverage, I think reactive is like a key component of like your regular roadmap. Like just have it always on. Even if you don't have something specifically planned for each week, just being ready and having the resourcing available in case something does happen that makes sense for you to be a part of, that you have the bandwidth to jump on it. I also think we're starting to think about reactive as a way to insert our current clients into like roundups that are in current publications that are being sourced by LLMs. So we're using kind of reactive as a way to see if we can insert our clients into roundups or articles that already exist so we can help them get them referred by LLMs for other things. So there's new ways to think about it. But yeah, totally to your point. I think digital PR is getting harder in a sense that the formulas that used to work don't work anymore. So we have to kind of be nimble and be strategic with like how we're using reactive. Yeah.
Two things. I mean, do you feel like you're getting less responses these days from journalists
I wouldn't say less responses. I would say it just takes like we're still
for them
getting
to respond or to find the right ones?
both, like for them to
Okay.
respond or for them to like, share the article or the story that, we're like, this is a shoe in, like this should be perfect for them. It might take longer. I have a few theories on like why that might be, but I also think that that just means that we just have to be creative with our stories and making sure we're getting journalists everything they need right up front when we're pitching them.
Yeah. I mean, anecdotally, like I've just heard there's fewer journalists and more people pitching, right? And so they're just a little overloaded. And I don't sounds like maybe that aligns with one of your theories. I wanted to pick at that second piece that you brought up, the like strategy of using reactive to get yourself inserted into roundup lists. I think that, of all of the like tactics that seem to work right now, when people are talking about showing up in LLMs, that seems to be the most common or commonly used is like that getting your brand mentioned in roundups, writing your own roundups and mentioning your brand, that sort of thing. So tell me a little bit more about how you use reactive PR to kind of get in there.
Yeah. So I think it's about, if there's a trend or something that's appropriate to the roundup or kind of what's happening in industry, it's a good way to kind of then insert yourself or even just introduce yourself, being like, hey, so and so, I represent this brand. I saw this great article. Like, you can say, would you consider adding? And these are the reasons why. But if you kind of want to nurture that relationship a little bit more, then maybe you can get to know, like, hey, like, tell me what you're interested in. What can I provide you as, what can my client provide you as an expert on, whatever field, and to see if you can get in play. But yeah, you're totally right too. Like even offering up your own roundups and maybe publications that are, have like our high TA top tier that maybe don't have a roundup yet. And you can maybe pitch it to them. That's actually so very much traditional PR. So I started in PR in 2013 at a really small boutique agency, and we represented a bunch of CPG brands, so like consumer packaged goods, a lot of like bars, cereals, snacks, and I felt like that was what I was doing day in and day out, was pitching magazines for like the what's on like the best protein bars, the most organic juices, that kind of thing. So it's really kind of come full circle. I mean,
Yeah.
sadly, no more, not as many magazines as then, but yeah, it's kind of the same concept, right?
Yeah, for sure. You're making me remember like one of my first freelance gigs ever. I was helping someone do like PR, like traditional PR for, they worked in just like baby products, like kids specific. That was the focus. And yeah, it was all roundup stuff. I mean, that seems like it's a much more commercial space though. Like, do you have to end up paying for these placements when you're doing it that way? Should people expect to pay for them, I guess?
So I think we haven't really come across this directly just yet, but I have a feeling that there is somewhat of an affiliate scheme happening on some of these websites that we haven't been directly told yet, but I think that is kind of what's happening. So I'm curious to see how it will all play out if, you know, yeah, if that'll still be the case, or if like most websites will start going to that once they figure out that their articles are being sourced by LLMs. Well, that is something that we've talked about and considered, is just, is there an affiliate approach to that, and how we navigate that?
Yeah. So I know like we hinted at this as well, but I want to kind of drill down some more of the kind of differences, I guess, between UK and US
Yeah.
reactive. I mean, what do you like for Rise of Seven is obviously like was originally a UK based agency, then they kind of have expanded. So like what are the differences, if any, I guess,
Yeah.
from your perspective?
Yeah. So the differences that I've noticed is I feel like for UK reactive, when you pitch commentary or something, I feel like a lot of times it'll get published that day, the next day. They're really fast as far as like putting stories. It's almost their press culture. It seems much more like, hate to say it because that's a negative connotation, but like tabloidy. Like it's just very much like we're going for it. Like we're gonna make the splashy headline. A lot more like case studies. I feel like in the UK, I made this mistake and this happened to me. Like that seems much more like their bread and butter, as opposed to in the US. We can pitch those things. It just feels like it takes much longer. And there's just a little bit more of skepticism right behind, like, oh, who are you talking about? What happened to you? Like, I need a source. There just seems to be a little bit more, they want like more expert authority, like expertise, as opposed to like Joe Schmo off the street telling about an
Mhm.
experience they had, at an airport or something. So it's a little bit different there. And I also too have seen, especially in the healthcare space here, providing commentary, whether it's reactive or about a campaign, takes a long time, like 3 to 6, because there is an editorial standard that a lot of like these health publications have, which is good, right? Because they don't want to just be, you know, putting anything on the internet, especially when it comes to people's health. So we've seen like really long turnaround times, especially in the health space, and that kind of translates to other publications as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, that in mind, should we be expecting less? Should people be expecting less in terms of coverage and results from something like reactive PR than they would a traditional kind of hero campaign or, some of these other strategies outside of
Yeah, I don't think they should
pitching?
expect less. I think they should just expect that it's going to take a little bit longer, and it's going to be maybe a little bit more time consuming as far as, pitching journalists, following up, waiting to hear. But that's kind of why I mentioned earlier, like you want to always also kind of have like campaigns too, because that way you have a continuous kind of like cycle of things that are going out. So that when things do hit and you get maybe a bunch of links with something, that's great, but you're not like, that's not the only thing. You might get like 2 or 3 links with a couple of reactives here and 2 or 3 links with a couple of reactive here, and that adds up over time. So like having that consistent roadmap, I think really makes a difference. And ultimately too, just like patience. I feel like a lot of times people panic when they don't get a link right away or in the first couple weeks of the campaign. Um, and I totally get that. I get that anxiety and that fear, but I've just seen time and time again, just as wait and you're patient and maybe you have to try a new angle. Maybe you have to come at it a different way. Like that's okay. A lot of times if you're just patient and you just keep outreaching, you can earn those results. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great advice. The patience thing for sure. And I mean, maybe you're kind of subconsciously speaking from like working at an agency, like this is the kind of stuff you have to tell clients all the time. If you're doing it yourself too, I totally get it. And, again, like for people who are listening who are like small business owners, like it's not, most of this stuff is not stuff that's going to happen overnight, like cultivating a relationship with a journalist, the trust with a journalist. Obviously that takes time. Tell me a little bit, Madeline, about like, nitty gritty of like, how many emails do you send? How many like responses do you typically get? What, like for a specific reactive thing, like on average, like how much coverage you get, like that kind of stuff, like just to help give people a sense. Cause I do think the point that you brought up of like using it as a supplemental
Mhm.
strategy versus like the full strategy, like that's the smarter way to do it. But just,
Yeah.
yeah, if you give some examples, I guess.
Yeah. So I guess like as far as like numbers wise, when I'm sending like a reactive, I mean, typically I'm always going to have at least more than 100 contacts, no matter what campaign I'm working on, whether it's reactive or like a full blown campaign. So you're going to have quite a few. And then, depending on the depth of your commentary or what exactly you're pitching, you could have from 100 contacts to like 1,000 contacts, right? But they're all going to have different tailored angles. We're all going to touch on things that are relevant to that specific journalist or that publication. So there is a bit of time is being consumed there, right? Like it takes some time and energy to do all that. And typically, depending on the trend or something that I'm jumping on, I might send all those emails out within like an hour or maybe a span over a couple days, and just depending. And then typically response wise, I would say, if I'm going to send out 100 emails, I might get 2 or 3 responses, which is pretty low, right? But of those responses, I would say most of the time it's either people telling me, they're not interested or yes, they want to move forward and they need, X, Y, and Z in 4 hours or something like that. And what's great about that though is even if I do have a low response rate, a lot of the times, and I'm sure you've touched on this in other podcasts, those links or those stories will get syndicated or other publications will see them and then they'll write about it too. It kind of like a bubble effect. Like, even though it might seem like, oh, is the juice worth the squeeze? I think especially if it's in those publications that you really want to be featured in, it definitely is. So yeah, it's just about finding like the time and effort to make it happen. And that's a trick in itself. So I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was going to be my next question is like the building those lists. I mean, it sounds like you maybe have kind of pre-built like industry lists in mind that you're leaning into, but is there any kind of manual list building as well that goes
So
to
yeah,
supplement these?
I'd say most of the time it is kind of manual. Also, too, because I've just been in this industry for so long. I feel like I kind of know off the top of my head the publications I want to go after. We oftentimes too will have for all our clients like a link intersect. So that's comparing, our client to their competitors and where the kind of gaps is. So that's kind of a good place to start. Like, okay, which one are applicable for this reactive? And I can just find the appropriate context there. Also to shout out BuzzStream, your list IQ is super helpful, that feature. So, when we can just search like a trend on Google News and all of like the applicable articles are right there. Then we can just pull that using list IQ. That's also super helpful for reactive. I know our team has been loving it. So there is a bit of both, right? Like there's manual, there's also just kind of like that knowledge of having been in a little bit of like what kind of best publications, who are the best contacts. Also, too, it's not like you make the list and you pitch and then you're done. For me, I know I'm always kind of building on a list. Like in the morning, I'm checking the news, reading the podcasts, reading the newsletters. If I see someone or something that, oh, I'm like, oh, this would be perfect for this reactive, I'll add them to the list and then pitch. Like it's kind of a living, breathing thing.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, don't let your lists get dusty.
No.
Madeline, we're kind of coming up on time here. I know I want to be cognizant of your time. One of the things I like to ask my guests, now I totally stole this from someone else whose podcast I was on, was what are the questions I didn't ask? Like, what do you really want people to know about this, about reactive PR?
I think it's not really a question, but I think what I would want people to take away from it is that it doesn't have to be so, like, it doesn't have to be work. It can actually be really fun to talk about, like, trends that maybe you never thought you would be able to speak about, or things that you never thought you would learn about. For example, like, we did like a Lilo and Stitch reactive when it came out, the movie, because it got such rave reviews, and it was talking about the destinations and stuff. And it was like, wow, like I never thought I would be drafting commentary about a kid's movie, but here I am, and it's fun and it's different. It doesn't have to be so like in the weeds of like your niche. Like it can be fun, it can be uplifting. If you kind of have that attitude of like, oh, I'm learning something new, I get to do something unique, it doesn't feel like such a, and I think some people get like, disheartened when we acted like that's so much work. I have to move so fast. And you do, but if you kind of like lean into like the fun aspect of it, I think it's just much more enjoyable for everyone. So
Yeah, it's just great advice. I love that. Well, let's leave it on that. Madeline, where can people find you if they want to get in touch, ask questions, that kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
stuff?
yeah. Yeah, so really the best place to find me is probably be on LinkedIn. My profile name is Madeleine Hennessy Dykes, but you can also find me at the Rise at 7 website. And yeah, those are the best places to find me.
Yeah, awesome. Well, like I said, like, subscribe, that sort of thing. But also, if you have questions about this stuff, leave it in the comments of the videos. I post the stuff on LinkedIn. I'm sure Madeline would be more than happy to answer anything. So thank you so much, Madeline, for your time. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks, Vince.